All right. Wow. Hey, Barbara.
Hey, Andrew, how are
Can you,
you?
you hear me?
I do. Do you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, good to see you.
It's good to see you. I'm sure you've been interacting a lot socially just over these Zoom calls
Well, I
lately.
learned how to use Zoom. I didn't know until just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I
Um,
know. Everybody's
but
been living on it.
it's just the way we can connect with people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm enjoying that. Yeah,
Yeah, I know for sure. I've been watching movies over Zoom with friends. It's been nice.
me too. Everybody has to figure out what their preferred method is, though, because people are texting me, "Do you want to leave the audio on so we can talk during the movie, or should we just chat by
Right.
texting?" Or,
Right.
I prefer. This is what I prefer. You all show up on the Zoom. We chat over cocktails for 40 minutes. We
Yeah.
catch up. Then we watch the movie. If we want to say something, I write something
Yep.
and then we check back in after the movie. Otherwise, I'm not really watching the movie.
That's exactly the method that we've adapted
Yeah.
because we've been watching every Friday night a movie with friends, and there's been a couple. We watched Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile, but we didn't
Hmm.
really watch them because we
Yeah.
talked the whole time. And then we watched Blade Runner and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and we went with your method.
Yeah.
And
And how is that?
it was great. We just chatted
Yeah.
before and after. We had the video up the whole time, but we just, yeah.
Yeah. And then you can watch people enjoying the movie.
Yeah, it's
You kind
great.
of look
Yeah,
over to the screen every once in a while and you see somebody laugh or go, "Oh my God," if you're watching a horror movie or
I know.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, watching Roger Rabbit, I kept looking over and just being like, "Good bit. It was a good bit," and
Yeah.
then seeing my friends laugh.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us on the stream. We just watched. Well, we watched a number of things.
Hmm.
We watched our Onyx interview. We watched Groblins. We watched the Bruce Campbell video,
Wow.
and then we just ended by watching House Mother. So I wanted to
Hmm.
talk about House Mother first.
Okay.
And one of my questions is, how was it being in all of that makeup? Because I think prior to House Mother, you hadn't
Hmm.
done a life cast before, correct?
Uh,
I don't know if you had done
Not
the
over
like
my head.
not over the
No.
head. Yeah.
I've done body parts before, but not over the head. And I was quite nervous about it, to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, you were there, so
Yeah.
you remember. I actually brought my own bottle of Merlot that I gave
Yes.
to Bruce Fuller, and I said, "Give me a glass, open this wine." And I drank
Yeah.
about half the bottle of wine because I'm claustrophobic
Yeah.
anyway. And I thought, am I going to be able to do this? This is going to be really hard for me. And he said, "Okay, you're going to be in there for like 20, 25 minutes."
Right.
I was in there longer. I know I was in
You
there
were.
longer. And I remember at one point, all the material goes over your head and it's slathered with layers
Yeah.
and liquid which hardens.
Yeah.
Um, and um, it just got quieter and quieter and quieter. And I got more nervous. So I remember at one point I went like this and then like this, like I wanted to write
To write a
something.
note. Yeah.
So you guys gave me some paper and a pen, and I wrote down "talk louder" because I
Right.
could kind of hear you talking, but not very much. As soon as I heard you talking louder, I felt like I was still with people. But there was
Right.
a few times when I thought, oh my God, I got to get out of here. I can't take it. Get me out. Get me out. And he said, like, wave your hands if you really
Yeah.
have to get out. I didn't. I stayed in there. It
You
was rough.
did.
It
I
was
know. I
rough.
mean, the sensory deprivation is real. I mean, once you kind of lose your sense of hearing and you're not
Hmm.
really touching anyone, then you can start to just feel like you're floating in a void,
Yeah,
which
it
is
was
super
strange.
freaky.
Yeah, and it was 40 minutes I
It
was in there,
was.
I think.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I've got the behind the scenes footage. We're showing some of it now, and it was definitely like 40 minutes. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it
But
was good he didn't tell me that it was going to
I
be
know. I
that long.
wonder if that's like a
Yeah.
trick to say, oh, it's only going to be. But he's such an old school. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to work
Yeah.
with Bruce because I
Yes.
knew he was so experienced,
Hmm.
and I knew he would treat you right and do the best he could to get you in and out of that stuff.
Yeah, Bruce Spalding Fuller, look him up, guys. I mean, he's done so many cool things from
Yeah,
television to movies, Dick Tracy and the Avengers movies,
yep,
some of them, and now he was working on the Kaminsky method, I think,
Yeah.
as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's been around a long time.
Yeah, and I got keen to him. I watched a documentary about the making of the Island of Dr. Moreau, and
Yes, right.
he's one of
He's
the
one of the
FX artists.
premier effects artists on that movie.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
So House Mother came about. I don't even know if you know this, but you were a guest. Well, you were a guest on my podcast, but you
Yeah.
were a guest on my podcast, Bizarre States,
Yeah.
and you mentioned that you at the time you hadn't had the chance to play many villains. And
Mm-hmm.
I had already had this idea. Originally, it was a horror. It was much more of a comedy, and it was I don't know, something I pitched to Nerdist as like a web series that was kind of like, I don't know, maybe Amy Poehler is the house mother. It was like really heightened
Mm-hmm.
comedy. But then once you were on the podcast, I started rethinking it because you mentioned wanting to play a villain or even an outright monster. And then that's when
Yes.
the idea got reshaped in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered, since then, have you gotten to play more villains or more monsters even? And how has
Um,
that been for you?
yeah, I mean, since I've gotten old and old biddy-ish, people are allowing me to play sort of crazed maniacs.
I don't know if
I
anyone would say Barbara, the biddy, but sure,
Yeah, but that's, more character stuff for me. So
sure,
I have gotten, how about emotionally and mentally challenged,
sure.
for lack of whatever term we might want to use. I played sort of a compromised caretaker in a movie called um, Sunchoke, and
Yeah.
then in a movie called Dead Night, I did play uh, like a demon from the other world, but I pretty much had my own face. Um, in an upcoming movie, I'm going to play sort of the head of a cult,
Okay.
and so I have that to look forward to.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I did just shoot something that we finished right before the lockdown, and really days before. I was on a plane back from Mississippi on May 3rd, and I think May 8th in San Francisco, where I live, we had the lockdown, and
Yeah.
that's in this movie. I also play someone who, depending on your point of view, you might feel she's a good person or a bad person. We're not sure. So, I've
Well,
I've
yeah.
I've been
How
able to
much?
play some of those emotionally challenged roles, but
Yeah.
House Mother was really the first and only thing that I've ever played under makeup, and I was so stoked when you asked me to do it. I was like, yes, I'll be
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
down. When do you need me? Yeah, and I loved being under all that makeup.
Well, that's one of my
Um,
questions was how
mhm.
was it for you? I've done a few things where I mentioned this prior to you joining the stream where I played my weird character, but he was a werewolf. And I loved being in the makeup. And I did
Yeah.
another video where I was a demon. I found it very liberating. Did you feel like the makeup was liberating? Did you feel restricted? Did you feel like you had to practice kind of exercising a different muscle as a performer? What was that like?
Um, it definitely helped me with my character, because anytime you play any character and you have clothing or dress or something you're inside of in your wardrobe, you're going to feel differently. And this is about as extreme as you could get, being under all that makeup. Um, I will say that when Bruce was first applying the the makeup to me, and we were actually going to start filming, and it took quite a long time,
It
maybe
did.
five hours or 4 hours, or I don't
I
even
think
know.
so.
It
Yeah.
was a long time. Um, I remember getting frightened of myself, looking at myself and thinking, wow, I really look scary. That's frightening to me. Oh my God.
Right.
Yeah. So to play the house mother the way he wanted me to, I had to get past that pretty quickly.
Right.
And I did. Once I got used to it being on my face, it only took half an hour, and I went, oh, okay, I gotta, I can calm down now. I see where
Yeah.
this is going. And I was transformed into this creature character. And I found it to be liberating, really, because it was helpful. The makeup was helpful to me,
Right.
for the character. So, yes, and I'm female, and I've been in the horror genre for a long time, and I do think it would be nice to see more female villains under makeup. We get a little bit of that. Bonnie Aarons has gotten to do that a few times
Yeah,
in
for
some
sure.
films, but not as much as Doug Jones,
Yeah,
not as much as Kane Hodder, Derek
yeah,
Mears, those guys. So yeah, why not me? I mean,
totally,
and so thank you for offering me that role. And at one point, and it could still happen, we were looking for financing to make it into a feature, and
totally.
you had a lot of interest on that when it first
I know.
came out. Yeah.
I know. We were, yeah, I mean, it was one of the best learning experiences for me because, and it's not over. I mean, I feel like what I
Mm-hmm.
learned during kind of prep, because the whole short, for anybody that doesn't know, it was constructed to be a proof of concept. It was really constructed to be a pitch
Mm-hmm.
piece for the feature.
Yeah.
Even the short, it kind of plays like a trailer. I mean, you just get a glimpse of maybe what the like inciting incident may be. That there's this
Mm-hmm.
chant that people speak, and then this spirit arises, and from that short, we did pitch the feature, and it did. I mean, there was a good chunk of time
Mm-hmm.
where I really felt like we were
Yeah.
going to get liftoff,
Mm-hmm.
and then, as it often happens, things just kind of fell through. But it's one of the most, for me, it's one of the most kind of thought out concepts I've dedicated my time to,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's one of the reasons why I won't give up on it. I mean, I still think there's a great feature
Yeah.
there, and I know it may be confusing for anybody that just watched the teaser, but the themes are really relevant. I mean, the themes, the and this was challenging even at the pitch level, so you've got these women covered in these horrible sayings and these terms,
Mm-hmm.
but that was what the film attempted to deal with, was the slut
Bullying and
shaming and
yeah,
bullying and
yeah.
hazing in
Mm-hmm.
culture at sororities and in frats. So I realized through the process it's very difficult if something is layered and if something is a bit complex. It is hard to distill that to a proof of concept.
Mm.
There's got to be so much explanation wrapped around it. And we tried to provide that context. I mean, any pitch we had, those questions were fielded by me. I mean, they asked like, well, what is this saying? But I think we had a really great message, and it was kind of
Mm-hmm.
an antidote. We met with one producer that was like, well, yeah, it's like an 80s, sorority movie. So you got to have nudity, you got to have like the girls in the showers. And I was like, no, it's the antidote to that. It's supposed to
Yeah.
be, you don't see anything like that. It's about these sorority sisters banding together to like fight the evil house mother and the evil sisters that are
Mm-hmm.
hazing them, and it actually becomes this message against the tropes of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little bit hard to communicate, but yeah, I mean, I still think there's hope for it as a feature, because it's a strong concept, and anybody that I show that proof of concept to, they get excited.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know
Yeah.
more. And I am just, I mean, behind me on the desk, well, From Beyond is on my TV right now, but
Oh, I see that. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it
In a
happens.
very
Oh
sensitive
God, it's
scene.
exact. I knew this was going to happen. I
Oh,
knew if I had
you
From
planned
Beyond,
that. Yeah.
no, I did not, but I knew that if I had From Beyond on the TV, that you'd
Yeah.
be there right when
Mm,
that scene
yeah.
happened.
And what were we just saying?
And we
Going
were just
against
talking
that.
about
Going
objectifying, and
against,
exactly,
yes.
and speaking
Oh,
against that
jeez.
reductive representation. Oh my goodness.
Mm.
But that is a great segue into my next question, which is, you've often, unless I'm wrong, you've often kind of refuted the term scream queen.
Hmm.
I think because you felt that was maybe a little reductive. Is that true? And if so, why? And what's your take on?
Yeah, I think that all happened because somebody tweeted something to Bria Grant, who I had worked with on Beyond the Gates
Yeah,
and Dead Night as well, saying something to her like, "Would you consider yourself a scream queen? And if not, who would you consider a scream queen?" And she tweeted something like, "Well, I don't really think I am, but maybe Barbara Crampton is." And she tagged me in that, and I thought about it, and then I texted her and I said, "Can I respond to this how I would really respond?
sure.
Because I don't really care for that term, and I think it's a little antiquated for today's audiences and the kind of the kind of stories and movies and the kind of characters that women are playing now in
Yeah.
horror movies, I feel like we've moved beyond that a little bit. And it doesn't, I mean, I know it's a term that's said with love. I know that people say
Yeah.
scream queen and they say it with love. I get that. But I also know that it is, to use your term reductive, I feel like it is that in a way that it doesn't really showcase in those two words what females go through beginning, middle, and end in a
Yeah.
horror movie, and the kinds of depth of performances that we have to pull out of ourselves. So
Yeah.
I just thought it was time for a reboot,
Yeah.
to look at that again. So I tweeted something back to her, and then two people um, contacted me. Meredith Border, she was working at Birth Movies Death at the time, and Freddie in Space, John Squires, he was
Right.
working at Bloody Disgusting, and they both said, "Would you write an article about that?" And since Meredith asked me first, I said, "I'll let me write it for you, Meredith." So, and she's a woman, and I thought, well, that'll work.
Yeah.
So I wrote an article about it, and people can look it up. Barbara Crampton, "Don't Call Me a Scream Queen," and I also interviewed 10 or 12 other luminaries in the business, and I said, "How do you feel about the term?"
Yeah.
And some people said, "I don't mind the term." Felissa Rose, "I don't mind the term." Linnea Quigley, "I don't mind the term." Even Heather Langenkamp, "I don't mind the term." But I interviewed Amanda Wyss, I interviewed Simon Barrett, and a few other people, and they had their own issues with it. And at the end
Yeah.
of the article, they talk about what they don't like about the term as well. So, I hope I gave a well-rounded explanation of why I think maybe, let's look at it again. And
For sure.
yeah.
I mean, even as a fan, I feel like when it's weird for me to think of all of the female performances in horror to be categorized as scream queen when
Mhm.
there's some of those performances they're villains. They're, I mean, in
Mhm.
From Beyond, you're a million different things in the span of that
Mhm.
runtime. There's a lot that goes on.
Yeah.
It isn't as simple as damsel in distress or scream
Right.
queen.
And yeah, and that's where I think the term originated
Yeah.
from. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what I was gonna say before before we reference what was on my TV was that when you
Mhm.
talk about wanting more female monsters, what I was gonna
Yeah.
say is that behind me, and if I can reach it,
Yeah.
uh is so I really love New Nightmare.
Uh-huh.
And I have, what's set up behind me is supposed to be Onyx's bedroom for when I do my weird characters, vlogs,
Mhm.
and stuff like that. But it's just an excuse for me to keep the stuff that I love around.
Mhm.
But so I have this New Nightmare figure
Mm.
of, Demon Freddy,
Mhm.
which was a direct inspiration for, if I can reach it, uh, for House Mother, which I have the
Yeah, that's cool.
maquette
Yeah.
of. And for
Mhm.
me, I mean, yeah, that gets me just as stoked as seeing the
Mhm.
Jasons and the Freddys. I mean, I
Well,
love it,
yeah. I mean, who do we have under the makeup? I mean, we kind of only have we have Bonnie Aarons, and we have Tiffany from the Chucky series. We have
Oh, right, Jennifer Tilly.
yeah, we have my friend Jennifer Tilly, who I blanked on
Sure.
her name for a second. We have her, as Tiffany, but I don't, Hellraiser, we have a little bit of that, but it's not under
Right.
real makeup. So I don't know. I
Right.
kind of like to see that. That's why I think somebody should do House Mother.
I
We
know.
have
I
it. You
agree.
have the script, and
I know.
yeah,
I
we're
know.
primed
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, totally. No, I agree. And hopefully we see it come to fruition.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to ask you about what is next for you, but I
Hmm.
know that you I don't know how much you can talk about what you filmed right before we kind of went on lockdown, but you talked about it a little bit
Yeah.
before. You were referencing
Hmm.
Jacob's Wife, which has been,
That's what it is. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
announced. And I mean, how much can you tell us about that? And then I wanted to hear about Castle Freak to whatever level
Hmm.
you can tell us about
Okay.
Castle Freak.
There's quite a bit I can tell
Okay.
you about both. without spoiling the story. I just never want to spoil the story, but
Yes.
I can say with Jacob's Wife, um, it was a script that was in competition at Screamfest 4 years ago, and it won Best Screenplay. And Denise Gossett is the head of that festival, and she and Mark Steensland, who was the original writer, got together and said, "Oh, this would be a great project for Barbara Crampton. Why don't we try to get it to her?" So it was sent to me, and I had just started producing a little bit. I had done Beyond the Gates, and there's another movie that I've been trying to produce for a long time, called The Wildness, about
Yeah.
werewolves in Aspen, Colorado. And I had a development deal on that for 2 years, and then it fell out. So people knew that I was kind of doing that, producing at the time. So it was sent to me, and I really loved it. And it's a story about a married couple, and their relationship is a little not quite what it used to be. And then there's a tragic happening, and it changes both of them.
Hmm.
And you don't know if they're going to make it. You don't know if they're going to become different, if they're going to be apart. It encompasses a lot. There's a lot of supernatural happenings in the movie, and there's also a lot of high emotional drama, which I love.
Yeah.
A horror movie that's really grounded in a beginning, middle, and end narrative that makes sense, that goes somewhere and takes you on a journey and takes you home and gives you a satisfying ending. And that's what the story was. Um, to get it where it needed to be to raise the money for it, I went through 4 or 5 different writers
Hmm.
who did different drafts of it before. And there was a production company that I ultimately did the movie with. They weren't happy with the different drafts of it, and I had to give them one that they liked,
Yeah.
before we could move forward. And once I was able to get a good draft, we then felt like we could take it out to different directors and show it around, and then see who was interested. And oddly enough, the woman who wrote the final, not the final draft, but the final draft uh, that the company was happy with, is Kathy Charles, and she is the writer of Castle Freak.
Oh, right on.
So she had worked on. So through this time, I had a different different writers working on it. In that time, I was also working with Dallas Sagne at Fangoria and Cinestate, in that company, developing the Castle Freak movie.
Yeah.
And she had written a beautiful story for us. And she's a very good writer, and I just thought, she's going to be out of my price range, for me to ask her to write a draft. But
Right.
um, I got her to do it. I got her to do a pass for me, and I, I it was just so great. So then we took it out to people, and Travis Stevens was the person who said to me, he was so passionate about it, and he said, "I really want to do this. This has to be my next movie. I love you. I love this material.
Yeah.
This is it." So we said okay, and the production company had worked with Travis on a few other movies, and I had worked with him on We Are Still Here, so he was a friend of mine, and I felt like, well, he would be a good fit. He's also produced movies, and I thought that would be a help to us as well. And he's just fantastic. So yeah,
Yeah.
we just finished that in right at the end of February. So now we're in post production, and he's doing a little bit of editing on it, and then we have to hire a professional editor to come in and then do all the post production stuff for the
Right.
next 9 months or whatever it's going to take us.
Right.
So I have something to keep me busy, which is great.
Totally. It's
And
important.
yeah, and Castle Freak is completely done. I shot that in Albania last summer. Um, I love it. It's
Yeah.
a very different story. It's it's about a younger couple now, not an older married couple, and their names are John and Rebecca, but that's basically it. Somebody inherits a castle, and they go to
Right.
Albania, and there's a freak.
And there's a
There's a
freak.
and that's the only thing that's the same
Yeah. Was that
in. Mhm.
difficult to decide, especially because the original short story is so short? I
It
mean, it's
is.
so
It's
short.
just It's just about the freak and,
Yeah,
waking up to his life in the castle and being able to
right,
roam around and finding the mirrors. I mean, I don't even know how many pages the story is. I could
right.
tell you the story and it would take me 2 minutes.
Oh, for
Yes,
sure.
very, very brief.
Was it difficult to decide what story to tell with a reimagining of Castle Freak? Because there's so many
Yeah,
places you can go with it.
right. Well, we had 10 different writers come in and pitch us ideas. And this was such a great learning experience for me because I was on those calls with Dallas and Amanda Presmick, our other producer, and Tate Steinsick, our director, who I think you know Tate. Don't you know Tate?
Well, I only know him because I know some of my makeup artist friends
Yeah.
are from Face Off and they know Tate.
Oh
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
So
yeah.
it's kind
He's
of friends
he's
of friends.
he's amazing. So we had 10 people pitch us their idea for the story, and everybody had a different take on it.
Right.
And there were a few that were really, really good, and it was hard to choose at the end. And Kathy, just for some reason, we just really liked her and liked her take on the story the most. And I had read scripts from all the writers that pitched to us. I really liked her writing. It's very clear and linear, like I'm talking about. I really
Yeah.
like stories like that make sense and that you can really grab onto. And she tells a really good story, and it has a lot of humanity in it and a lot of depth. And it's about younger people, but I don't want people to think, because some people had mentioned this to me when we said it's about young people. Oh, it's going to be like some 80s TNA thing and
Right.
young people and slasher. It's going to be a slasher movie, and it's not that at all. It's not that at all. It's
Yeah.
really complex and deep and interesting, and I think it's cool. And I did say this already, so I could say it again. Uh, we married two different stories, Castle Freak and the Dunwich Horror.
Right. That was my next question.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I,
Was that an
I,
easy marriage?
at first it was something that I brought up, and um, initially Kathy was like, "I don't know, can we do that? Oh, I don't know. Let me think about it." And then she came back the next day and she said, well, we knew that we wanted to enhance the Lovecraft universe. We wanted to expand it. So
Mm-hmm.
that anyway, that was my idea. Other people had other ideas. So we all thought about the ideas. Then she came back the next day and said, I think I like that idea now. I thought about it overnight and I think I can do it. So she had to wrap her head around that and sort of alter the pitch that she had given us. And then I think it works great. I think it works beautifully. It's almost like it was meant to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like so much of Lovecraft's writing uh intermingles, thematically
I think
that,
so. Yeah.
yeah, that it
Mhm.
wouldn't be crazy to think about kind of melding some of those,
Mhm.
yeah, stories.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to, with the little time we have left, I wanted to ask chat if they had any questions. The first
Mm.
question is just, why are you so awesome? So I don't know how you can answer. I don't know how you can answer that.
Oh, I
But I,
get yeah, I'm looking in a mirror because I see so many awesome fans, you know, out there who are so excited about the genre and so excited about horror movies. And I will say, when I came back to acting, because I had taken a break for a while,
yeah,
and Year Next was sort of my comeback movie, I realized that I belonged to a club that I didn't know that I belonged to when I
totally.
came back. Because when I came back, all of a sudden everybody was on social media and everybody was going to conventions, everybody was going to film festivals, and I was thrust back into this world of horror. And I made so many new friends, and I got so excited by all you young people that are making films and doing cool things, that it's been really inspiring to me. And it
Yeah,
was very easy for me to rededicate my life and my career to horror because I love the fans, and you guys
yeah.
are awesome.
Well, then they love you. Yeah. Haley has a question. She asks, what's the most challenging role that you've had?
Well, that's a good question. I've actually never, you'd think I would have thought about that. I don't
Right.
know if I've ever thought the most challenging role.
What about just physically
Um,
challenging? Has there been something where it was just
well,
exhausting for you?
I don't think it's that. I think it's more emotional and mental
Yeah.
for me. It's usually I I want to get to the depth of a character. I want to get to the right, um, the place of where the emotional intelligence is for the character, where they're coming from. And I think that's the hardest for me. And there was sometimes you read a script and I see it and I say, I can play this role. I know how to do this.
Hmm.
I get it right away. And then sometimes maybe it's not close enough to me that I feel like I really need to do some work to get to a place where I feel like I'm coming from the character.
Right.
So there's been two roles like that, I'd say. One was We Are Still Here, where I had to play the mother of, you know, somebody who had died, my son who had died in an automobile accident, and
Right.
I haven't had that many people die around me, my parents who are older, but to have a young person die who I'm really close to, I've never had that. So I interviewed a couple of ladies that had lost their children in
Hmm.
auto accidents, and that helped me. But I just, to get to the truth of that,
Right.
I think and be authentic is something that can be scary. And so, that was difficult. And then I did a movie, which I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's my best performance because I don't know if I really
Hmm.
got there. But I did a movie called, I hope he's not watching, the director, but I did a movie called Road Games with
Yeah.
Abner Passel. And it's a movie about a serial killer, and there's five characters in the movie, and you don't know who the serial killer is until the end. And it could be me, and it could be my husband, and it could be this couple that's on the road, and they're hitchhiking, and it could be this crazy neighbor. And my character was so sorrowful and anxious and upset all the time, and that's so foreign to me because
Yeah.
my set point for happiness is really high. It was a constricting role for me to play this nervous kind of person. And I look at myself on screen, I'm like, oh, I was okay in it. I don't think I was that great. So
Right.
yeah, I
I
mean,
mean but a lot of times that is something that the actor may feel personally, and then you might be surprised by how much it
yeah,
does work for the
I guess,
audience.
I mean,
You never know.
yeah.
Well, TJ in chat has a great question, and
Hmm.
I think it's a good question to end on. Is there anything about horror now that is more exciting than when you began your career? Are there aspects to the
Hmm.
horror genre now that are more exciting and engaging than when you began your career, or vice versa?
Yeah, well, I think we're telling maybe more interesting multi-layered stories now.
Yeah,
This story sort of seems straightforward when I was first beginning, although I don't know, you know, um, maybe Stuart Gordon is not really that straightforward, but
yeah,
um, things sort of ticked off boxes. Well, this movie is this, or this movie is that. And today, I think, you know, we have a lot of mixes and crossovers of genres. And you see a movie like Mandy come out, and you go, "Wow, what
yeah,
was that?" Um, and I'll also say I enjoy the fact that since coming back, I I am able to do other things. I am able to be now a producer and an actor and do other jobs that I weren't in my lane when I was first starting in the 80s, which is where I feel like people were. Um, People just did their jobs. You were an actor, or you were a
right,
director, or you were a producer. And now, especially, and initially coming back, my eyes were open to this quite early with Your Next. All these, Adam Wingard can also be the DP as well as um, be the director of a film. Amy Seimetz was an actress in the film. She's also a producer and a director. Ty West was an actor in the movie, and he's a director. So
yeah,
everybody's doing multiple jobs now.
everything,
You
right,
guys can do everything. And
right,
I
right,
and you do it too.
yeah, yeah,
Andrew, you do everything. You're a performer, and you're a producer, and you're a writer.
right,
And I don't think you would have done that back in the 80s. So
Right.
thank God I was given a second chance that I can also do some of the things that you guys are doing, because I think it's, you know, it's almost like you have to do that, right? Because you
Yeah.
can't do one job. You have to be able to do all the jobs. But it's also given me a lot of inspiration to keep going.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to just at the end of this at least ask one question
Hmm.
about Stewart, because he's somebody
Mm.
that
Thank you.
the industry lost, and that close friends of his lost recently. I just wanted to ask you, what is it that made him a special collaborator in your life? What do you
Hmm.
think kind of led to such a, it seems like just from an outsider's perspective, such a kind of lush atmosphere for collaboration and
Hmm.
creation with Stewart?
You know, Stuart was right there with you in every single scene, in every moment. He was
Mm-hmm.
quite a heavy handed director.
Hmm.
If he could play every part, he would. He could.
Mm-hmm.
He really understood the characters from an in depth emotional level. And he would talk to you much like a theater director, and talking about the motivations of the character and what you wanted to do and how to play the scene. And um, he was he would just really dig in with you and talking about how he thought you should be playing the scene. And he pushed me in ways that not many people since have really pushed me
Hmm.
to be as emotional, or to be as angry, or to be as sexy, or to be as vulnerable. um he, some directors don't really talk to you very much. That's fine. I mean, that's the way they choose to direct you, and they're more visual, or they've talked to you beforehand, or they felt like they've cast well, and so they just want to let you do your thing,
Mm-hmm.
work it out with the other actors. And some actors don't like to talk to directors either. I had a friend that recently worked with Samuel Jackson in a movie, and he doesn't really want you to talk to him too much.
Hmm.
So, it's everywhere. It runs the gamut of how the collaboration and the relationships go. But with Stuart, he was right there in with me, and I actually love that.
Yeah.
I to me, I gravitate towards that, and I ask my directors to talk to me. Um, and I really enjoyed that about him. He really pushed me to look deeper.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely proven by the work. I mean, that's what it feels like when you watch his films, and especially the films that he made with you. That's definitely there on screen.
He was a special, special person, and I think his collaboration with Dennis Paoli was like gold. I mean, they
Yeah.
just wrote some really beautiful scripts together, and I'm thankful that I feel that he gave me my career by giving me two of the best roles I've ever had in my
Mm-hmm.
career, Re-Animator and From Beyond, and to some extent Castle Freak as well, but probably the first two more so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I'd be where I am today with talking to you without his influence on my life. And a lot of people feel that way about him. I know a lot of people um, that he touched their lives, and he had a running stable of people that were his interns that have gone on to be directors themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
he would always read your script too if you wanted advice or wanted some thoughts on it. He loved other people in the business, and
Mm-hmm.
and loved to be around artists.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I've told you this story, but I happened upon his office in Burbank at some
Oh.
point on a lunch break when I was a casting editor. I was editing
Mm-hmm.
casting tapes, and I happened to look through a window and see a Re-Animator poster. And I thought, well, who has a Re-Animator poster hanging in their office?
Hmm.
And I went around the corner and I knocked on the door, and he opened the door.
That's crazy. Are you
I
kidding
know.
me?
No. And it was probably like my
You never told
second,
me that.
I didn't tell you this. It was probably my
No.
second or third year in LA.
Red Hen
And
Productions.
exactly. And that was the little
Yeah.
sign that was on the
Mm-hmm.
front. And he opens the door, and I was like, I don't know why I knocked on the door. I'm so sorry, but I'm a big fan, and I
It
saw the
was a
poster.
psychic moment. You
It
had a
really,
like,
it
yeah.
really was. And I was prepping. I'd been writing a short called Monster Machine, which was a real homage to his films. My character in the short references Herbert West, and he talks about
Mm.
reanimation and all this stuff. And he was like, "Come in, sit down." And he just invited me in, and we sat there, and we talked for probably 20 or 30 minutes about that short. And I asked him a few questions
Mhm.
about his films, and it was just this impromptu hang with one of
Mhm.
my literal idols.
Mhm.
And then I realized, like, I got to get back to editing casting tapes for Wipeout and Real Housewives.
Yeah.
So I got to go. And he's like, "Well, thanks. Send me the film when it's done." And I sent him the short when it was done. I got his email address, and
See?
yeah, I mean,
That's the kind of guy he was.
totally, just
Yeah.
complete support, and
Mhm.
um, just was excited to just have a conversation about the art and the work at any level. It didn't matter
Yeah.
that I was an editor, that it was just trying to get one of his shorts going. Stuart was really present for that whole interaction, and it meant a lot
Right.
to me. Yeah, yeah,
Wow, that's a great story.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Barbara, thank you so much for being on this stream. And
Andrew, thank you for having me.
it was wonderful, wonderful to see you, even if it's,
I know.
virtually. But
Yeah.
where can people follow you and find you in social media? And then if there's anything else you want to let people know about that's coming up, I know you've been
Mhm.
doing a lot of
Oh,
watch
yeah.
alongs, and
Yeah.
let them know, and then
Thank
we'll
God
sign off. But
that's our saving grace right now,
yeah,
isn't it? That we can all watch together alone. And yeah, so I'm enjoying that. Yeah, I you can find me on social media, just my name, Barbara Crampton. But I do have a couple of what I'm trying to do is push my old stuff now because I can't
yeah,
work on a lot of new stuff. So
right.
I'm asking people to watch my old crap that you haven't watched yet. But I have some new movies on uh, online now. Like I did a movie called Reborn. It's sort of a Carrie versus Frankenstein film about an 80s horror movie actress who's looking for her next big break,
Nice.
and something from her past is holding her back. So that's available. And if you haven't watched Replace, that's a new film that I
Hmm.
did a couple of years ago, uh, but was bought by a distributor, and then the distributor went bankrupt, so it had to be resold. So
Oh, wow.
they had it in the UK a number of years ago, and then it's only just come out. It's on Shutter,
Okay.
um, and now and then Castle Freak. You can look forward to that very soon. We're going to make an announcement about that. I'm not in the movie, by the way, in case anybody was wondering about that or didn't know. I'm
Gotcha.
just a producer on it, but I think the acting is wonderful. I'm really proud of all the performers. So we'll be making an announcement about that very soon. It's completely done, and
Awesome.
so stay tuned for that.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
I'll sign off by just saying thank you, Barbara. And thank you to everyone that joined in the live stream. Thank
yeah.
you to my producer and technical director, Maddie, by the way,
Thank you,
for helping
Maddie.
us make this happen.
Yeah.
And House Mother will be up on BowserVids, my YouTube channel, after this live stream. It's lived on a couple of different channels over the years, but
Hmm.
I wanted to kind of bring it into my main channel. And yeah, until we do the next BowserVids live stream, this is a perfect time to sign off. The credits are rolling on From
Oh,
Beyond
cool.
on my VCR.
Thanks.
So yeah,
Yeah.
until next time, thank you
Okay.
everyone for joining, and thank you, Barbara, for
Thank
joining.
you. All
All
right.
right, have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.